utilize that energy. We're able to get that gasoline where we need to go. We don't need to fool around with whether it's summer gas or winter gas or whatever. And so I think that's an important, that's an important aspect of this. It's something we can do that would streamline the future.
Ken, I think you're right. I hope this organization can join with our private partners in looking at what recommendations we would make. There's also taxing issues. So if we're trying to cross the border, where's that tax paid? Our companies in Mississippi were trying to pay taxes. They were trying to deliver that gas and say, we will pay it. The Department of Revenue in Mississippi was saying, oh, they need to pay it here, no, they need to pay it in Texas, maybe they got to pay it if they pass in Louisiana. And so we got on the phone and helped work that through. We might have to look at Congress. I hate to say that because I'm not sure any of us will live long enough to see that solution. But there are a number of waivers that need to take place to be able to move and transport oil, gas, diesel fuel, those resources that are badly needed during a natural disaster. And I hope we can make some recommendations on how to do that.
I'd like to add to that. That's a good idea. What I've learned over the years that political office essentially is a hunt for the next good idea. And a lot of ideas are in your head right now. I've never thought of that. I did not think of that. I was thinking of something else, I guess. But I would recommend to everybody, if you've got a good idea, write it down someplace. Write it down before you go to sleep, because it'll disappear. Write it down, put it on paper, send somebody a letter, and then follow it up. Those are things that I see that I steal ideas from these guys all the time. They think of something we try to modify somebody.
I've got a lot of great ideas, I just can't think of them. And also, here's what I'll say real quick on this front. If ever there has been a time where what you're suggesting is possible, it is now, for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is this administration and the way they think, but also the fact that the pendulum of common sense, thank goodness, despite the fact that it grinds slowly in certain parts of this country, like Washington, nonetheless is swinging back in our general direction. And I think that's a good thing. And this is an administration that is open to good ideas. And there's strength in numbers. And there is an amazing, you think about this. We're, 16 states and 2 territories? We consume 46% of the energy in America. Think about that. We consume 46% of the energy in America. Why is that? Because this is because everything is made here. We're smelting things, we're refining things, we're building things, we're stamping things, we're milling things. And to that end, there's an amazing amount of influence and muscle that this group has or should have, and it's a function of us harnessing it. It's a function of us utilizing that well. And I think that this is an administration that would be open to hearing us. And if we're united, I think the real key is to, among ourselves, and I would hope this group in the next days, come up with the 1, 2, 3 next best ideas, and let's prioritize those. Because there's a saying, you all have probably heard it, if you chase 2 rabbits, you don't catch either one of them. If we start chasing every little rabbit, we're going to catch nothing. But if we identify the rabbits and we chase those little suckers down in sequence or divide and conquer and chase them down, it will be remarkable, I believe, the things we can get done in the next years.
Governor Bevin, follow up on that a bit. The Trump administration and Congress, as we speak, exploring, reaching out to the states on oil and gas policy issues, in particular, for more state-federal cooperation. I think they're finally in Washington realizing that one size does not fit all. What works in Kentucky doesn't necessarily work in Mississippi. And I'd just like all of you to comment, if you start, on what do you think that that's a good direction to move, or just your comments on that?
I do. I'm a strong believer in federalism. I think, the states are the laboratories of democracy and the laboratory of the kind of ideas that we're talking about. And to that end, I think it's a brilliant idea. This idea that the solutions that ail America on the energy front or any other are going to come from Washington, D.C., and Governor Bryant's point wouldn't lay, good odds on that. I would say that the more likely approach will be innovation from the bottom up. And we are unique, and we are distinct, and each of us have competitive strengths and competitive weaknesses, and that's just some of it beyond our control and some of it due to things that each of us, as was noted, that we're trying to learn from one another. But I think collectively, our region, when you're producing, there is a ripple effect to the fact that you're producing one BMW every 61.7 seconds. There are people that are producing components that go into those vehicles that are in each of our respective states. This region benefits. When one of our boats rises, all of us are rising with it to some degree. We may be on a different part of the swell, but we're all moving up and down generally at the same time. And I think the more we think that way, and I'm grateful for these two men because I can learn a lot from them. I'm the new guy. This is like Sesame Street. You heard their bios, you heard mine. It's like one of these things is not like the other one. I'm the guy who's just trying to learn from people who've been to the rodeo a few times. But here's what I'll say. We can learn from each other, we can work with each other, and while we compete, yes, indeed, if we are actually partners as much as we are not, all of us are going to do better. And I do see this administration, as we have noted, as one that is intentionally, because they're business-minded people. They are reaching out to us. They are asking for our input. They are taking the advice. They are responding to phone calls they get in 10 minutes. And that's just the MO, and I don't think we're done seeing it. I don't. And I think it's good for America. It's good for our region.
Well, I don't think we've ever had a better opportunity in moving this industry forward on a global scale. This administration understands that we can be not only energy independent, but energy dominant. I remember going in and meeting with Rick Perry about a week after he arrived. He was still unpacking his boxes, and he said the president gave him those instructions: not energy independent, but energy dominant. It's going to be huge. Now, it's going to take the freedom of the states, if they will allow us. I always remind our friends in the press, no one cares more about the land, water, and air in Mississippi than we do. We raise our children there. We raise our crops there. We raise our animals there. So the idea that somebody from New York or Washington is going to come to Mississippi and say, we know better how to manage your environment than you do, is just ridiculous. There's people who still believe that. So we've gone through not only natural disasters, but we've gone through a pretty large oil spill in the Gulf with BP. And I can tell you the way you respond to that is critically important. One of the things that we did in Mississippi is come forward and say no one wanted this to happen. The BP is just as conflicted over this as anyone. And they're working hard to get it stopped, to get it plugged, to get it cleaned up. There were those that wanted to blame everybody in the universe for that. But as we all lean forward into that spill to make sure that it was managed properly. You go to the Mississippi Gulf Coast now, it's pristine. Water's better than it's ever been. Beaches are just absolutely beautiful. I was down there before yesterday. So you can overcome what many thought that was this environmental disaster. I remember people saying this is going to last for 100 years. Well, it was about, 8 years ago? Not 100 years. So, but the states, working with the federal government, even in an administration that was not trying to be cooperative with the energy industry, we were able to overcome and manage that problem. Look what we've done in the last decade. This country now, it is energy independent. We're talking, all of us are talking about exporting. I mean, who in the world thought natural gas would be at the current price? Or $50 a barrel oil. And that seems to be, I think, going into the future about as far as we can see. And that was, again, with an administration in Washington, and for a large part of the Congress and the Senate that was trying to do everything they could to stop you from producing, from stopping you from growing the energy sector. That they wanted all of us to drive electric cars. I'm not mad at electric cars, I just don't want one. and that ought to be my choice. And so I think now we have the best opportunity to show the world what America can do. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing in the state.
Right. Oh, a good idea department. I don't know who it was that figured out how to do the fracking to make it work like it has, but that, of course, has changed the world. And it's given us some opportunities that we haven't had in a long time. But we had Art Lappa at the mansion. By the way, anybody, we got a beautiful state house, a beautiful governor's mansion. It belongs to the people of the state. You're all invited anytime. Let us know when you want to come by and take a look. It's as beautiful as Charleston in South Carolina.
Well, I'll show up about 5:30.
But Art Lappa was there. Y'all remember him from the supply side theories, and turned out not to be theories. John Kennedy did it, Ronald Reagan did it, it worked, and we need to keep on doing it. This administration, President Trump is dedicated to do it, and that's good. But he was talking about ideas, and he painted a picture of 50 different states, each with different circumstances, different weather, different geography a little bit, different kind of people, different structures, as the 50 laboratories in the world, all competing with each other, trying to come up with a better way to do things. And what an exciting prospect that was, because it's not going on anywhere in the world. And it certainly isn't going on in Washington. You can't do that in a place like that, but you can do it in the States. So what these men have said, I agree with 100%, and that is the states in their individual sovereignties and capacities with their research universities and the technical colleges and the thinkers and the people trying to build things. We've got a great opportunity, I think, here, particularly in this region of the country where we seem to all fit together very well, to really go off the scale with some new ideas and in our very, very competitive natures to create some things that are not going to come out of Washington, D.C. or any other place like that. It's a great future.
Governors, I'd like to switch a little bit here into another area. And back in 1953, President Eisenhower started the Atoms for Peace program. And that basically transitioned nuclear energy from a defense program into commerce. And we began to build nuclear plants, and we built them over the years. We built over 100 of them, and they've served us well. Now they're reaching some economic problems with some plants. Some plants are having to close early, and those issues are of concern, great concern to states. I know some states now are trying to find a way to keep nuclear power in the mix. But this region has been a bastion for nuclear power. We have almost 50% of the nation's nuclear energy here in the South. And that gives us nuclear legacies of various kinds. South Carolina plays a big role, of course, in all of this. Over 50% of our energy in South Carolina being nuclear. But, Governor, you've seen some problems lately. You've seen problems with the two plants that are coming forward that we're trying to build in South Carolina. And also we have two plants in Georgia that we're trying to build, experiencing similar problems and issues. Governor, your state just passed a new law that says we're open to nuclear power now. We weren't in the past. From 1984, you had a law that prevented it, but now those things are changed. So I'd like the three of you just to comment on where you think we're headed in terms of this nuclear issue. Governor Bryant, your Grand Gulf's one of the biggest plants in the country. In your state, supplies almost 25%, used to supply almost 25% of the energy now.
What's about the nuclear power plant in North America?
Right? And so anyway, so I'd like your thoughts on nuclear energy. I will say, Governor McMaster, I know this is difficult for you because of the things that are going on in your state, and so we'd just like to have your comments and thoughts.
Okay. Well, it ain't difficult for me because I think we will come out of it just fine. But as you said, we have hit a bump in the road, and that's because a big company, y'all know the story, I'm sure. Westinghouse went broke, And Westinghouse was working on our two reactors at the summer facility and also in Bevin in Georgia. And they went broke in both places, of course. The whole company went broke. And they're owned by a Japanese company called Toshiba. And Toshiba has given some guarantees, and whether they promised to honor those guarantees, but whether they will be able to financially is another question. And we've had conversations with the administration about discussing the importance of Toshiba keeping its commitment to Westinghouse and to us. But the interesting thing with that is that we have said to all of the power companies, anyone interested, that we are willing to consider selling Santee Cooper, which is the 45% owner in those two new reactors and a third owner in the existing reactor. And we're interested in discussing the sale of that facility since we don't have any stockholders, the state owns it, we can sell it. And I got to tell you, I've been surprised at the interest that we have received from companies that I know all of you have heard of, but I hadn't heard of until this came along, as well as some individuals. And there's not many individuals that can buy a nuclear reactor, but there are some out there. And nothing definite at this point. But it's very good news that interest in nuclear is very strong. And so we've been meeting with a number of people, all at their request, trying to keep it confidential. But we may come out of it, we might need a perfect storm of things lining up. We may not want to sell Santee Cooper. Santee Cooper's done a good job in a number of ways. But there may be parts of this and parts of that. But what I'm saying is that there's a lot of money out there. There are a lot of people that are looking to expand. They want to get into the South. They want to get bigger in the South. And there's very much interest. And I don't believe that the need for nuclear power is going to go away. And we've had interest from those who want to take some of this property and put solar panels. We're growing very fast in our solar capacity in South Carolina. But the good news is I think there's great future in nuclear because it's 100% clean. Once you get it built, it's 100% clean and steady. And I think we'd be crazy to turn our back on it.
I just think Grand Gulf is the perfect model. Now, it is located in Fort Gibson, Mississippi, in Flavor County. So if you look the world over and said, where would I want to put the most technologically advanced nuclear power plant in North America, Flavor County would probably not be your first choice. But Energy, in the 1980s, the energy company, then Mississippi Power and Light, said that's where we're going to build this nuclear reactor. And people in Mississippi were very open, very welcoming to this idea. It went through challenges. Y'all remember during those days, Janie Fonda was making movies about the core of the earth is going to melt down. and people go to movies and actually believe some of that's true. It's like being a comedian on a late night show now. If you say something about what's going on, current events, I think I read something the other day, like 47% of the people get their news from late night TV shows. I don't think Johnny Carson ever did the news. But that's the world we find ourselves in. So we were having to go through all of that. I remember it in the 80s. So struggling with that China syndrome and all of those ideas. And we came through that. We weathered that. And recently, about 5 years ago, they put a couple of $100 million into renovating and bringing that new nuclear power system with the latest technologies, so it's even more of a production. Now, I think we're very fortunate because today the environment's even worse. I think with the regulatory practices that's been put into place in the last decade, I'm not sure we would ever be able to build another Grand Gulf to the level that we have. But it is safe. There's never been one issue with it. It is a huge opportunity for us because I can go to a company in Energy Service District and say, I can get you about 7 cents per kilowatt hour. And when you're in the San Diego area, like General Atomics, where you're paying 23 cents per kilowatt hour, that's why you want to move 8 different divisions to Mississippi. Yeah, 7 cents, 23 cents a kilowatt hour. The energy service area now is an area where we have the most opportunity to bring new businesses, new industries, new manufacturing. We make a Toyota Corolla every 71 seconds. So I'm going to send the plant manager up here and see if we can't get that down. 67.36. Yeah. Well, you know.
And for all those folks in California and other places who want it for 5 cents, you just head a little farther north. And you can but in all, here's the thing. What we're saying, this is our competitive advantage. Look at the theme of this conference. It's a new vision for America's energy future, I believe. Isn't that the title of the conference? Without vision, the people will perish. We've all heard it. It's as old as time. It's true enough. It's true for a nation. It's true for a state. It's true for a company. It's certainly true for the SSEB. So what is the vision? What's the collective vision? It's a different energy landscape. There's no question. Everything we're talking about is entirely true. The landscape is shifting. I was talking to the head of our largest utility in Kentucky the other day. And it was an interesting comment, and I believe I have this number correct, that if every single household in Kentucky, and we're 4.4 million people, and I honestly don't know the exact number of households, but if every home in Kentucky simply replaced one current light bulb with an LED light bulb, throwing off an equivalent amount of light. If every home replaced just one current bulb with an LED bulb, that would drop the load by the equivalent of 22,000 homes. Think about that. If you think your world isn't changing, for those of you that are in the utility industry, you're fighting against a tide that's pulling out to sea pretty quickly. And so what then can be done to not only keep costs of production low, because people, obviously, consumers want to be able to continue to have these affordable rates that we have an advantage on, but how do we do this in a way that doesn't compromise your ability to stay viable and stay in business? I mean, the energy landscape is shifting, not only in terms of how we consume it, but how we produce it. I would suggest to this group, and I mean it sincerely because it's into each of us as well, the vision we should have is one where we are, to the point we made earlier, remarkably cohesive in our thinking, in our focus, in our shared vision, and that we lever our strengths, which are remarkably alike in some respects, to our advantage. Selfishly, yes. We should hear the sucking sound of energy consumers into our region. We just should. And there's no reason why, if we play our cards right and use in all of the above. I mean, the energy landscape is changing. Obviously, coal's been a big part of America's landscape, the world's landscape, and certainly Kentucky's through the years. Is that changing? Yes. Is it going to be gone in our lifetimes? No, it's not. The bridge from now to whatever the future ultimately looks like is going to be built out of the very same sources it is right now. There may be, as we get closer to whatever the other side is, going to be less components of this, that, or the other thing. But the reality is we've got competitive advantages, the three of us and the others in this region, others represented by those of you. Let's use it. Let's partner, let's harness it, let's be intentional. And I am telling you, whether it's the nuclear issue, we did just lift the moratorium. Obviously, politically, in Kentucky for the last 30 years or so, there's a lot of pressure on, well, let's keep our domestic source protected. As if, I don't know that nuclear was ever really going to be a threat. That said, we do have a mighty river that feeds into some other mighty rivers. And all these things are good potential locations. And the ability to get, into the grid, a whole variety of reasons why nuclear could make good sense. But in light of the latest Westinghouse Toshiba, especially for some of the smaller reactors, which is where it's going ultimately, that may have taken a bit of a lump, not just South Carolina, I mean the whole country and the whole industry has taken a little bit of a lump as it relates to that. So that may change, but the bottom line is we lifted a moratorium simply so that we, like I'm suggesting for us, have the ability to say where is the best potential advantage for us. And I truly think that 1 + 1 + 1 as it relates to this stage alone can equal a whole lot more than 3 if we're not, being divisive amongst ourselves.
Governor Bryant, I heard Governor Bevin mention light bulbs, and I couldn't help but think of you. On a couple of occasions, I've heard you say, when you were a boy, Dad was always yelling, "Turn out the lights."
That's it. Yeah, I was raised by a natural conservative. And he wanted to conserve energy. And you didn't leave the room without cutting the light off. And I inherited that. So when I walk into government buildings and late in the evening, and every light there is on, or I'm driving home at night, these buildings, it just frustrates me. So we started I cleaned that up for you. It just really makes me angry. And so we got a new program in the state of Mississippi. I just sent in another company into the Capitol, which is probably the worst building in the state for energy efficiency. But we can clean a lot of this up. I think it's our responsibility. I think it helps our position to be able to go out and say we want to have the most efficient use of all of our energy that we possibly can. I think the opponents on the left, and they're well funded, and they are out there and they haven't gone away. The Sierra Club is still floating around every capital in every state in this nation. And so it puts us, I think, on the offense to be able to have a very robust program that says how do we go about conserving energy so that we may not have to produce so much of it into the future. And I think it's something that we can naturally do with sincerity. And I enjoy looking at the savings that we've been able to have in just our state buildings. We have a grant program now for cities and counties, if they will do the same thing, that we will come in and grant to them so that they can get energy audit in their buildings, and we're seeing some remarkable outcomes that I think are good for them and good for us and good for the industry.
You really teed up my actual question.
All right.
I wanted to ask all three of you. A lot of our 50 states have comprehensive state energy plans. Start with you, Governor McMaster. Do you think that's a good idea for the states to take that role? And has it, in your experience, both here in South Carolina and elsewhere, do you feel it's working well?
Yes. I think what Phil was saying is right. I think we have to develop that kind of mentality. A lot of times we don't think about what we're doing, but that's a good idea. It's an old idea, but it's a good idea. I think we have to be very careful about all our resources, including energy. And I think certainly something at the state level, perhaps not mandatory. There are a lot of things you get done just with a good idea, but you don't try to force people to do things. But suggest very strongly and bring ideas to light, and it produces results.
Bryant?
Oh, absolutely. When I came into office, we didn't have a formal energy policy. We didn't have, I asked for it, where is our energy plan for the future? And so we began immediately calling in all of the representatives of every one of the energy companies, every one of the energy industries. We brought in our EPA representatives, and we said, all right, what's the plan for the future? What does it look like? All of the above, certainly, but how do we deal with our natural gas, our gasoline production? We're 13 in the nation for production of hydrocarbons. We're 20 on natural gas, 13 on oil, and so we are an energy state. What does the workforce of the future look like? How many young men and women want to go into the energy industry? So we started a program called Get on the Grid, where we go to our community colleges and we're training young men and young women to come into the energy sector. And we show them that on average it pays much more than many other industries will do. Because if you just are a young person and you happen to listen to some of the radio stations and watch some of the things that they watch, you would think that we are all evil, that we somehow want to destroy the planet, that we want to go and just take away wildlife from the ocean, and nothing's further from the truth, but then you go to them as a young person and say, you want to come to work for energy. You want to come to work in the nuclear industry or oil and gas. You want to go offshore and work on one of the platforms. No, because they've heard that this is a nasty industry that's going to harm the planet. So we got a lot of education that we had to do. So we began to talk very positively beginning in high school with programs about what the energy industry really does and how many lives you save. Think about hospitals, large consumers of energy. If the lights don't come on in the emergency room, people will die. If you can't refrigerate your food, people are going to die. I mean, the thing that energy companies have done is bring light to the darkness, and we had to sell that with our program. We just, as a matter of fact, we're going through an update of it just now, and how we can look forward to the future of making energy work for all of us.
I'm so caught up listening to Governor Bryant, I forgot what the question was.
No, seriously, here's that yes and yes as well, I think. I mean, but I've got a fellow who I've been in governor for less than 2 years. I've said, including the people who I've appointed, Charles Sangley, known to some of you, spent decades in the energy industry. He's a guy who gets it. He's coming in where we're taking a new look at what we're doing. Certainly, I think that we as a region should think about what our vision is as well, and what is our policy as a group. And there's competition among people in this room, clearly. But I tell you, there's amazing literal and figurative connectivity between people in this room as well. And I truly believe that if we find a way to make this region the absolute mecca for anybody that is looking for energy consumption, and the pendulum is swinging this way. And I'll tell you, all the big dogs you hear out there, the automobile manufacturers, the people looking for new headquarters, all of these folks, they're talking to people on this stage and others as well, but the odds that they're going to end up in our region is probably pretty high. Not a given, they might, who knows where they'll all go. Odds are decent they're going to end up somewhere in our region. The better we do as a group of creating an environment in which we have an energy plan that's good for all of us. There was conversation earlier about, the certain era, the OPEC era, when things were, very different in the Jane Fondas and all the things even before that. And I will say this, you look at what's happened in the last several decades. All emissions, period, not just CO2, emissions, period, nationally, not just in our region, nationally, are down 70% in recent decades. 70%. You would not know that to hear the commentary coming from all of these well-funded and self-serving organizations who would have you in our willingness, and it is partially our fault for not pushing back hard enough, to allow that to become the perception that people believe to be reality. The hypocrisy, if you remember, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, when Davos, all the geniuses of the world get together and solve problems for the rest of us idiots, that's how they would see it. They didn't forgive me for those of you who perhaps gone there. But I would say this. They decided they were going to talk about, global climate change and how this industry was really the catalyst for this. Even though I remind people all the time, people say, well, are you worried about the world getting warmer, and all these things that man's doing to accelerate this? And I will suggest this, I'll give this to you. You can feel free next time someone asks you if you believe in this. You don't have to deny me. They love to think that we're science deniers and all this nonsense. Here's the thing I ask people. Do you believe that the world was once largely covered by ice? Pretty much anybody who's paid any attention to anything scientifically, glacially, or whatever else would say that it was. Where did the ice go? It didn't disappear because it's been getting colder. I think we generally agree to that. And when did it disappear? Long before the Industrial Revolution. Long before anybody at Titusville started pulling any kind of a petrochemical out of the ground. So the truth be told, yeah, there's things changing. Of course they are. This idea that somehow we're the boogeyman, that somehow we're the path, is nonsense. It's nonsense. Do we need to be good stewards? Yes, indeed. Who has led? You look at the Kyoto Accord. We pulled out in 2001, a few years in, 100 and some odd nations were party to this. 84 ultimately signed it. We did not. Every single goal that was laid out by those Kyoto Accords 20 years ago, there's one nation in the world, one, that has met the standards that were laid out. Who do you suppose it is? Exactly. The Paris Accord, what do you think is going to happen? It'll be the same thing. Everybody will come and give lip service. Everybody will come and blow. We should make sure that we understand what's really happening and communicating that. But back to Davos, when they decided they were going to solve this problem, 2,000 to 3,000 people came to figure out how they were going to subjugate this industry and industry in general and save the world from energy, pollution. They flew there on 1,700 private jets. I'm serious. 1,700 private jets for a couple thousand people. That's the kind of idiocy that we're battling against. And this is, is that a little harsh? Yeah, but it's also reality. And I would encourage us to be bold and strong about our messaging, because there is a well-funded, counterpoint, but it's wrong. It's wrong.
I'd like to ask a question of you all.
Let me say one final quick thing real quick. I'm sorry. How many of you have been in a country where electricity is not guaranteed when you flip a switch? Exactly. So this is why I say they're wrong.
Since the recession in 2008, the country has basically experienced a flat load energy, electric load growth. And yet, all of you guys are out there recruiting businesses internationally. Governor, you just got back from India. So there's this absolute need to go out and to try to economically develop the region and try to get new programs, new plants, new manufacturing in here from other countries. When you do that, when you think about, do I have the electricity to handle this plant that it comes in? For example, Kentucky's just exploding on aerospace, and I was really shocked. I kept thinking, gee, what a great role coal plays. And then I realized how far down the list it was compared to some other things that you're doing now in Kentucky that are automotively and just all kinds of businesses. So I was just curious as to do you look at electricity? Do you talk to the utilities in your state about, hey, if I bring in this plant, these Indian people come in and they want to build, chassis or whatever it might be in our region, am I going to have it? So do you think about that issue?
Oh, every day. It's one of the things that we use to help recruit businesses. We show them that low kilowatt hour, low cost of energy for their plants and ask them to compare it to any other states or any other country. When we're competing on a global marketplace, we got Continental Tire to move to Clinton, Mississippi. We're competing with 28 other states and 4 different countries. And again, one of the reasons they'll be a large consumer of electricity. So energy, again, work with us. TVA, with the local rural electric power associations. They are key economic drivers for us. And we're having to work harder because, quite honestly, the lower price for a barrel of oil has affected many of the residual industries that support oil and gas exploration and production. So I've got companies now that we're selling pipe. We've got companies that we're doing offshore supply to rigs, a supply company. And these companies are in a difficult position now because of the low production levels that we now see. And I remember saying something to the effect that, the lower the price of a barrel of oil, the more difficult conditions you're going to see with a lot of companies. You're going to see a lot of people out of work. And one of the reporters said, Phil Bryant doesn't want people to have lower price of gasoline. Of course we do. Of course we want the consumer to benefit from that. But the reality of it is some of the companies that were looking at growth, particularly in areas like the Tuscaloosa Marine Shale Play in southwest Mississippi, that has come to a halt. And so all of those jobs, all of that industry that was building up around that play has now stopped. And so we are out trying to lower the price of energy that is hurting some of the industries that we just grow the rest of it. Technology is a huge opportunity for us, but I think also looking at infrastructure for energy into the future. And we talked about cybersecurity, very important. So all of this goes together to build a very healthy industry in our state.
I'd say every single one has, am I still on?
think we'll cut you off.
Okay, yes, to answer your question, yes, we think of it, and so does every single company that comes and talks to us, because they want to know about a steady supply of power. And we've got a lot of people in the state, including in the state legislature, that have a lot of experience with this sort of thing, and if they get involved also we have a very strong electric co-op system in our state. It covers almost the state here and there. In addition to Memphis County and Sandy Cook, they buy a lot of that, maybe most of the power from Sandy Cook. And they're in a very in competition with the other states and with the low rates. But I tell you that the other thing that we've seen that's been alluded to a little bit is another thing that all these companies, every single one of them are concerned about is the workforce. That is, there will be people there that can do these jobs. They will have to have power to turn the machines on. And these are $1 billion machines. These plants that I go to that come in, and the ones that have been there, and those that are expanding, and those that want to come, the workers don't carry toolboxes anymore. They carry laptop computers, and they're working on machines that we got to learn how to work a $1 billion machine. Right now, we have 60,000 jobs looking for people in South Carolina. Used to be the other way around. Now we got jobs looking for people. Fortunately, we have a mature, energetic, supercharged technical college system that started in 1961 that has arisen to meet those needs. And we actually send teams to other countries to look at those plants, to understand their customs, their traditions, the machine itself, how the plant operates, what their goals and attempts are to produce all. And we can come back to our technical college systems and put together a curriculum that meets that, but we can't do it fast enough. Wilbur Ross has been talking about how workforce development is lagging behind, and that's the key to the future. And I'll say to digress for just a minute, we got a cultural problem out there in the country where if mom and daddy think that if junior doesn't go to a 4-year college and get a bachelor's degree in some subject that he is not going to make it, he will fail, and that's just not true anymore. With these technical colleges, with this type of work that's good, I mean, high paying, we got nuclear weapons making over $100,000 a year. There are all kinds of jobs that we've got to change the culture to teach, to alert the people that the future is not necessarily with a 4-year bachelor's degree or beyond. But this technical college and this kind of work is great work, and it's something a lot of young people want to do. If we can get over the hurdle that it's not quite good enough, then that'll unleash an explosion of workforce. But again, with that power, we can't do any of this.
I would say yes. Certainly, it's a competitive advantage for each of our states in this whole region, as we've said. It is something we talk about. It's something we recruit with. But I would say one thing as well, and I think you all probably know this. But if you look at what's happening geopolitically in the world right now, it's a scary world. There are many people who've never previously thought about domiciling some portion of what they do in North America like they are now. In a world of tremendous unrest, including on the continent of Europe, there is, in the entire world, one semi-bastion of stability and normalcy seemingly left, and that's North America, and how blessed we are to live in. We live in a portion of it that is benefited by the very things we've been talking about. And this is not lost on the world. And there are an amazing number of countries whose companies are looking to North America for the first time ever. And many of them are located in our state and in these other states as well, with their very first ever North American footprint. So you can bet we lead on that, and I think we should continue to lead on that, and I think we should anticipate and encourage and get out in front of, as these guys and myself and others have done, is going out and actively, proactively, meeting with these people where they are, saying, what do you need? Because truth be told, as we said earlier, in light of technological changes, the load is arguably going to be drawing down for you all. If you want to maintain and or grow, it's going to have to come through growth of users. Because what they're going to be using is going to become increasingly efficient. And so to that end, I do think that the net has the ability to be very positive for this region, very positive. But it's going to take a very intentional, proactive effort on our parts.
If I could add a PS to that. A few years ago, I was helping raise money for the new law school in Columbia, the new building. The law school's been there for a long time, but I was talking to one of the biggest law firms in the world, it's an American law firm. And this was back in, they had studies done back in about 2010 or somewhere back then. But they wanted to decide where to expand, where to open up new offices, and they got offices all over the world. We spent a lot of money, had 3 independent groups assessing where the economic growth was going to be in the world. You said that when the recession began to lift, and all the studies, very expensive, I'm told, came back, and all of them said that the growth was going to be in North America, in the United States, and it would be in the South, the Southern United States.
Let's say one other thing real quick, and I hesitate almost to do this because while we are collaborative, we do compete with each other. But I would say this, for those of you in the energy business who represent the consumers in the states, these two guys, if you're not working hand in glove with your governor, you all are collectively missing out. And I will say, and I feel bad picking them out, there's others in this room I can pick out, but Matt is here, Matt Sadway. You think about, we're putting the first aluminum rolling mill in 40 years, greenfield aluminum rolling mill in North America. It's coming into Eastern Kentucky, it happens to be a Matt's region. You think we didn't have a whole lot of collaboration together to make that happen? A ton. And my gracious, I've gone to the Paris Air Show with this guy and talked to CEOs all over the world about this. And this isn't because, we share the same first name, he's a good guy, but truth be told, I got a wife and 9 kids, I got plenty of other things, and a dog and cats and other things. I could be gainfully engaged doing other things, but we spent a lot of time together, and I've come to respect and appreciate what he's doing because of necessity. What's in our own best interests individually and together is requiring us to have communication. And working as a utility with your state government is a huge competitive advantage for you. But if you're not taking advantage of it, you should. And if you're not, and you're not in Kentucky, well, thanks. But I'm just saying, you should probably do it because it's very, very, and without telling tales out of school, that's a 7-figure draw on electricity every year, a very healthy one, the kind of which any one of your utilities would like to have one of those new customers starting. It's not even a zero-sum game. They're not coming from somewhere else. They're just starting up.
And yes, you heard right. He said 9 kids.
Hi, Andrew.
I'm all about it.
But the other thing we've got to do is try to build your industry. People that I talk to that are in the energy industry in Mississippi are having difficulties. And it goes down to the young man that was working offshore, and he's living in Pike County. He used to go off and work in the rig and come back home, now he didn't have a job. Those are real issues for real people. And so we've got to look at what do we do. One of the things I think we do in the future is how do we develop products that use as their basis hydrocarbon. So what products don't exist out there today that we could use? Polymers, plastics. You know, and I know, almost everything we use has some hydrocarbon base to it or some element of hydrocarbon in it. Can we do more of that? And I think this administration, I talked to Rick Perry, and I said, Rick, we need to do more R&D about how do we use the products that we're now manufacturing and connect them more with the hydrocarbon industry and make more of them around the world. You're right, I just came from India. They got 1.2 billion people, and they need a whole lot of things. They have an emerging middle class. So products we can help manufacture for them, energy that we can help supply for them. They were unaware of CO2 carbon sequestration, tertiary oil recovery. They're just now beginning to get into that area. So what technology can we export to countries like India that they will be able to buy from you, from people who produce those energies and those technologies to help that country build a middle class. So the poor people that are living in poverty might be able to rise to a middle class level and buy those middle class products that everyone desires. so that they can have air conditioning and a refrigerator, and so that their hospitals can have a heat source of electricity than in Mumbai and in Delhi. We've got to look at ways of growing your industry, making it more successful.
One tiny other thing on that too, as we look forward, you think about the new vision. For those of you that are big energy companies with big resources and big R&D budgets, the idea of assuming that those need to be spent and channeled in a forward linear direction would be, I think, a mistake. While it seems to be an antithesis in some measure that you all are in large measure representatives of those that produce energy, a challenge that I would throw out to you all is to think about energy storage and what can be your role in that, because that's where it's going. Not only for the U.S., but for much of the world, not only for practical purposes that we could think of, but a whole lot of others, not the least of which is the defense industry, the ways in which people are served in rural areas, which affect many of our states. But energy storage, at times when you see the kind of onset of hurricanes and things that have just happened, energy storage, battery storage technology, the ability to take what you produce, hold it in an extended period of time and be able to redeploy that back into the grid, that is going to transform your industry as well. It already is. And if you're part of that solution, it will be to your advantage, I would think.
I would like to have a question on workforce development. We kind of talked about that a little bit. Governor Bevin, you've done a lot in workforce development in your state, as so has Governor Bryant, and you have too, Governor McMaster. And I think, and you all think about the fact that we're now in a place where the utility industry manager is about 62 years old and getting ready to retire. And so, and the workplace is changing. And we're going to see those retirements coming along. We're seeing them already. But they're being replaced by people half their age in some cases. And so I'd like to know what you all are doing on workforce and how you see the future of workforce development and what it can do for the southern region.
Well, one thing I tell those people at 62, don't retire. The older I get, I realize how smart I get. Seriously, with Social Security and all those other things, we developed a mentality or a standard a long time ago of retirement that I don't think is applicable anymore. And I see some very smart people out here in this room that I know over 62 or 65, and I hope they keep on coming for a long time. My daddy passed away at almost 101. He tried his last case and won it at 93. Closed the door at the law office at 99. So I'm looking for all of that. A long time ago. But the workforce development, as I mentioned a minute ago, really the key to the thing. Because if these big plants come here, speaking of manufacturing, they need people to know how to work those machines. And you can't just pick that up. I mean, it's complicated. You have to know how to do it and break one of them. So, well, they didn't hurt you. We got a bad problem. So we're really bearing down on it. And we're working with our technical colleges to try to find ways to get more people to come in to realize it. And I think the real key, you have to have a place to train them, of course. And if you don't have that, then you need to get started. But for the energy industry, I'd say you need to talk to those technical schools and see what kind of relationship and what kind of collaboration that you can have with these technical colleges. Because every one of these companies, every one I talk to, you've heard all the names, they're all interested in that workforce development. Wilbur Ross, Secretary of Labor, said the other day they were going to try to change the they would change the requirements for getting apprenticeship programs approved. So if you have an approved apprenticeship program in this state, you can get, I think it's $1,000 a year tax credit or something like that. But right now the qualifications are written up in Washington. The Trump administration wants to change that, and that the qualifications be set up in the state. Those kind of things are the keys. Also, something I've learned is talking to these people is that in these big companies, big manufacturing plants and others, it's very difficult to move up into management. You come in at a lower level to move to management unless you have a 4-year degree. Well, a lot of these people that come in and work and do very well, they're very smart, they're very able, but they don't have that 4-year degree. They have a 2-year associate degree from a technical school. So we're trying to find a way to have a 4-year degree that's not a regular bachelor's degree that compete with the 4-year colleges and universities, but would be recognized as a 4-year college degree. That will allow those people who come in to move on up into management, which is where you want these people from, those who know what's going on out in the plant floor. But the idea of workforce development is something that I think we really do need to come to grips with. We got all the power in the world, and we got these companies coming here. If we don't have people who can run those machines and run those plants, and
We formed a workforce cabinet, and I brought in every agency that has anything to do with workforce training, and there were a lot of them. Community colleges, IHL. We even looked at daycares. 40 years ago, we put millions and millions of children into daycare, which was great, but we forgot sometimes to put a learning component in there. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce did a very good study about how those children are coming out without knowing the soft skills that we need that would make a good employee. So the continuum of workforce training begins in daycare and goes all the way to IHL, and you're right. We told these children, you need to go to university, and many of them went off for money. They got a degree in early French literature, and they're living with mom and dad. It's one of the largest groups we have coming back to our community colleges and learning the skills are students that had BS degrees, BA degrees from our universities. I said when I gave my first speech as governor, my first job is to make sure that every Mississippian that wants a job has one. I amended that. I want them to have a job even if they don't want one. So we took our SNAP program, our food stamp program, and said you won't get food stamps in Mississippi if you're able-bodied without dependent unless you're in a workforce training program, going to school, or donating 20 hours a week to a nonprofit. 80,000 failed to reapply the next year. 80,000 Mississippians failed to walk in there and reapply for SNAP. We think half of them went to work or went into a workforce training program, and the other would say, if I've got to go to work, I'd rather not have food stamps. That's their individual choice. But we've got 42,000 jobs looking for people, just as the governor said. We just the other day began a skills academy with a lot of our energy companies, and so that we can find out just the skills that we need. And how do we begin in middle school applying those skill programs so that student can grow into someone that works for one of our energy companies? Because you're right, we have a large population that is working in the energy industry. About 20% of our workforce is involved in some type of program related to the energy industry. We'd like to grow that, but that aging workforce has to be replaced. And if we don't deliberately go out and find a new, well-trained workforce, you're going to see a real problem in the next decade in our energy industry.
I would say this, be very careful about picking on French literature. I'll just say it's personal experience. Those of you who you know this. My very first speech ever, my State of the Commonwealth / budget address that I gave, I made the very same point that we're making, and it's an accurate enough point. And the comment I made, literally, knowing that not a single public university in Kentucky even confers a French literature degree, felt that that was a safe one, apparently not.
I've always one French literature graduate.
I will tell you this, based on reaction, I simply said that we need, as a Commonwealth, to incentivize the production of the graduation of more engineers and fewer French literature degrees. In terms of what we do with taxpayer money. You would have thought, based on the reaction, that half the people in Kentucky were French literature majors. So I recently, with all of our university presidents and boards of regents and trustees, etc., decided I would switch gears, and I went and happened to pick interpretive dance. Apparently, the other half of Kentucky is interpretive dance. I'm just saying. So, my point of all this is that you're going to offend anybody if you suggest in any way, shape, or form that having a productive, constructive path to adulthood is to be expected of people. Someone somewhere will be offended at that idea. But you think about it in the very beginning, when you think about workforce development, the idea of using taxpayer money, who first conceived of this? It was some of our founders. Thomas Jefferson was one of the pioneers of using the public wealth for common education. And what was his purpose? He said, we want to produce what? Virtuous citizens. What was a virtuous citizen? It wasn't a goody-goody. It was somebody who was a productive, functioning, contributing member of society. That was the point of it, and that's what it still should be. And so to that end, certainly in Kentucky, we have done a lot on this front. And it's something, again, as an employer, I've hired hundreds and probably thousands of people through the years, certainly many hundreds. And I have personal appreciation for how difficult it is to get good, competent, qualified people. And we have to incentivize the right kind of behaviors. And so in Kentucky, there's a number of things I can touch on. I'll just hit them real quickly. I put in, bless you, my first budget, $100 million for what we call a work skills initiative, basically a workforce development initiative. And what we said is that we would, as a state, put up $100 million, but to compete for this, groups had to apply, and it required, and I would encourage you that, every one of us in this region should steal these kind of ideas from one another. But what I demanded is not just simply give me an idea. I want the idea to come from a collaboration between the local high school, the local post-secondary school, and the business community. If the three of them don't sit down and jointly come up with a solution, it will not be considered for part of the $100 million. It forced a degree of collaboration and discussion, the likes of which had never occurred in some of these communities, which is remarkable. That we have, independent of the people who actually are looking to employ people and can employ people, have been graduating people out in there who are not capable of going into the workforce and doing the things you want and the people that are using energy want. And so this collaboration, this forced collaboration, because people will do a lot of things for $100 million, created $540 million worth of applications. Obviously, only about 18% of those, or whatever that equates to, could get funded. So we chose among those, got a bunch of people from the private sector business world to look at these, and where do we get the best ROI for the taxpayer? And so we went through those, but here's the powerful thing. Of the $100 million, it has generated more than $250 million in the last 15 months on workforce development training initiatives, modernizing and specifying the workforce training process in Kentucky. How is that possible? It's because in no instance is the state funding 100% of anyone's idea. In every instance, we're funding a portion, and they have to make whole the difference. And so, in fact, they've made more than whole in that they're paying more now, the private sector and those local communities, than the state is. And the powerful thing, even above and beyond that, is that I know for a fact, and there's probably some we don't know, there were ideas that people put forward that didn't get any funding from the state that liked their ideas so much they're doing it in those communities. The ripple effect of this is far beyond $250 million, and that's happened in a year and some change. This is the kind of thing that is critical not only to the survival of Kentucky, but of this region and of this country. This kind of workforce development is critical. You also hear about people say, well, everyone needs to have at least some post-secondary education. That's true. Since the return of the Great Recession, so 09, 10-ish, as we started to emerge, there have been 11.6 million jobs created in the United States. 11.6 million since 2010. 11.5 of those 11.6 million jobs have some form of post-secondary education as a requirement for the job. Think about that. So post-secondary education is critical. Whether it's a 4-year degree is a whole nother story. If time doesn't afford us the ability to go into all that, I will simply say this. In Kentucky, we had 5 distinct areas. They included things like healthcare, like IT, like logistics, transportation, things like construction trades, things like advanced manufacturing. These were the areas, there's 5 of them, 2 of them we put together as related to logistics and transportation. But in those 5 areas where we have well over 100,000 jobs that truly need to be filled even now, we said we, the state, will come along and make you whole for last dollar. You can now get a 2-year degree and/or certification. And if those of you in this industry know certifications matter, if they're the right certifications, they're movable, transportable, stackable, they have the ability to truly transform the workforce. And so we as a state will make whole any individual who wants to pursue one of those 5 paths. It will cost them nothing. And there are jobs at the other end of it. The average apprentice right now in Kentucky makes $57,000 a year. They're earning while they're learning. There is the last point I'll make is there is a fellow we make, as many of these folks do, and you all do a lot for Boeing. A lot of components are made for Boeing in Kentucky. The ribs of the Dreamliners, these titanium ribs that are fabricated in a way that was inconceivable not too many years ago. The technology, the sophistication, unbelievable. The fellow who oversees that entire rib of the 787 production facility in Shelbyville, Kentucky, was a guy that didn't even go to college for 10 years after he came out of high school. He did ultimately, he got degrees in engineering because it was necessary to keep doing the things he wanted to, but he was deep into the engineering and manufacturing world with hands-on practicality long before he went to any kind of post-secondary education. We need to rethink from an education standpoint, and this is where, again, I'm full of challenges to you all, but you're a captive audience, so I'm going to ask something of you. Help us with this. Push back. Stop demanding something that you know for yourselves is frankly of very limited value in many respects. There are certain disciplines that, yes, you need exactly that. You're not going to be a manager in a refinery if you don't have a certain amount of knowledge of chemistry or whatever the case might be. Certainly, there are things you need. But the general entry-level application, even at the state police level, I recently took off the application for our police academy that you used to have to be a state trooper. You needed to be either a former law enforcement, former military, or have had, I forget how many credit hours, quite a number in college. How useless is that last one, potentially, depending on what you study? I would much rather have a kid who worked from 18 to 28 in a coal mine, came out with his head screwed on straight, a good work ethic, and an ability to get in there. I'd rather have a kid like that at least be in the applicant pool, whether he went to college or not. And so I think I would encourage you in the private sector as well. Help us. It's like show me the money. Help me to help you. I mean, this is kind of really help us to help you. Help us to help you. By not being as demanding of things that may or may not be helpful, partner with us to help us with workforce development because it's critical in every single one of our states. It's the #1 issue for every governor in America, period.
I have questions from the audience for the three of you.
Board them into submission.
Critical energy infrastructure projects have come under protest by those who oppose the markets, subjecting these projects to needless delays. This includes pipelines, terminals, rail yards, and electric transmission lines. What can the states do to ensure that these projects are executed in a timely manner to deliver the needed energy to consumers?
Hit that real fast and let's go to break.
Yes.
I will say this. We can bust our tails to make sure we move with a sense of urgency. And I think, Matt, again, you can speak to this. The amount of permitting, this is the first greenfield aluminum mill, rolling mill, the $1.3 billion project, couple million initial square feet, they're going to, in 2020, be producing 370,000 tons of high-grade aluminum, 5,000, 6,000, even 7,000 series aluminum. This is a fairly sophisticated project. You know, I don't even know how many permits. Double-digit number of permits on every front. The fact that they've gotten those as quickly as they have is very much a result of the fact that we have people like Charles Snavely is our secretary overseeing this. We have a bunch of business-minded people looking to get to yes. And if the answer is, and this is what I say to people, and I'm sure each of us says somewhat the same thing, not everybody needs to be or should be doing what they do in Kentucky or in any one of our states. But we want them to get to yes or no faster here than anywhere else. We can, if they should ultimately be in Mississippi or South Carolina, as a business person, I want for them to figure that out as quickly as possible. But if in reality the answer is that they should be in Kentucky, then that I want them to figure out as well. So I think what each of us need to do is make sure we appoint people, this is what I've done in Kentucky, who get it, who understand it, who have a like-minded mission, to get to yes or no, safely, efficiently, and quickly, so that we can actually continue to move the progress forward. And I am grateful that we have people in Washington who share the same mindset.
That's absolutely right. Deregulation. Y'all remember that word? President Reagan started using that word. He said the closest thing to eternal life is a government job. And most of the government jobs were regulating industry. they spent their entire life regulating industry, and regulators are across the board. We did a lot of work, and Terry Burton was here, and President Pro Tem of the Senate, Senator Burton helped us so we could try to get rid of some of those regulations so that we would go out and say, we got one area for permitting. If you've got an environmental issue, go to DEQ, the Department of Environmental Quality, and they will fast track as best they can, making certain they do their job, protect our environment. But deregulation is so important to us. I know the President's talking about it. We talked about his executive orders and how he did away with all of the heavy burden of regulation that had been put one on top of the other. And so if we continue at the state level to look at how we can deregulate, how we can get you permitted as quickly as possible and get you up and running, you're going to see the benefits from that. And that's an infrastructure. It is across the board. There is some regulation and professional licensure board for everything out there. We have a lady who was braiding hair, and the cosmetologist board sued her. They said that was too much like fixing hair, and so everybody, if you start cutting grass, apparently you've got to get a license in horticulture before you get a lawnmower to go cut grass. We went totally out of control in professional licensure boards. And what happens is your competitor gets on those boards and they think of more regulations so that they can stop you from competing with them. And so this deregulation is going to be a lot of fun. Now you're going to see resistance like you've never seen before. Because the people that have a monopoly act like a monopoly. And their number one goal is to protect the monopoly. So deregulation is going to be an exciting new world for us, but it is going to be fight the bear.
I did too. We did that too. We had town hall meetings all around the state asking the people, business people to come in and tell us what the regulations are that are getting in their way. And I've issued an executive order asking all the agencies to go through, and Governor Haley did the same thing before I did, and others did it before that, and we still covered up with suffocating regulations. So I guess the answer is don't expect me or these men to know what those regulations are, because we're not fighting. We're waiting to hear from people who are those these things that are suffocating the businesses. As y'all remember Jack Kemp, he used to say that politics is not a spectator sport. You got to get out of the bleachers and get down on the field. But what I would do, I'd like y'all to do a video, they own the field. Get on the field, understand that that's your domain, that's where you need to be. You tell us, and not just at a cocktail party with you need to do this and you need to do that, but write it down and send it in and follow up and ask what it was done and where is it. And that's how you get things to move in government. Remember, President Trump had someone calculate how much just the delay in getting permits and getting yes, how much that costs, and oftentimes just the delay in getting yes costs almost as much as the project would have cost if it got to this beginning. The delay is a killer.
One thing we did on that front in Kentucky is I put in, you can go if you wanted to see what it looks like, and you could, I hope it gets stolen everywhere in America. I've had a lot of conversations with our president about this and with the Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, who, you see I wear this little button. It's this little red tape reduction button. All the cool kids have one, just saying. So if you don't have I believe I've given them to these gentlemen. I don't see them wearing it, but that's all right. But in all seriousness,
How do you thought that was the best thing?
well, that's the best. It's funny. It's funny you ask, because I did meet with a group of Jewish businessmen recently, and they wanted to know if it was something else. So everyone does have opinions about what it is. I don't skip anything except red tape. But you're not going to know for the rest of it, including hair. But here's the thing, cutting red tape. If you go to, just jot this down, you can look at it for what it's worth, redtapereduction.com. redtapereduction.com. We did exactly what Henry had asked, and we went to the community. I got 150 business people, nonprofit people, for-profit people, government people, non-government people in a room, and we launched this thing. called the Red Tape Reduction Initiative. And I said I'm going to cut 30% of the existing red tape in Kentucky in the next 3 years. We have 4,700 rules, 4,700 regulations, about 130,000 rules. And I'm quite confident that in Kentucky we can govern everybody with 90-some-odd thousand rules. I'm pretty sure we can get it done. So to that end, cutting 30%, but then additionally, what you want to make sure is you're not bailing out the boat while there's still a hole in it. I just signed into law a few months ago a piece of legislation that requires any regulation being passed in Kentucky, any regulation from this point forward, automatically sunsets in 7 years unless it's reaffirmed by the then legislature. Some of them will be, and for good reason. Many will not, and for good reason. And to that end, we want to make sure we limit the amount, so now I can focus. Of the 4,700, we've reviewed over 2,000. We've cut and eliminated hundreds of them, others scheduled to be. Others have been modernized, updated, or melded together with still others. When I was elected, we had 500 and some different boards and commissions that were creating these little monopolies, among other things, some for good reasons, some questionably so. We now have 300 and something boards and commissions in a year and a half. And so literally, it is proactive on the part of people to be engaged with us, but we just need to do it. Cut red tape. And this is, I'm telling you, it's something that liberals and conservatives and everyone in between love the idea of cutting red tape. Everyone has ideas of things that make their life complicated. And the more we can do it, the better. And I would suggest have a website where people can give you, not at a cocktail party, but feed constructive inputs. And I'm telling you, the ability, and then have people, as you I know do, and we do, empowered to do something. You act on that, and it's like a perpetual motion machine. People give you an idea, you fix it, they're going to come back with another idea. So, America needs it.
Sounds good. One further question. The nexus of energy and water is very important. And as we build new facilities, or as we have new baseload power, whether it's nuclear or coal or whatever it might be, a lot of these use lots of water. Does your state have a water plan to meet the needs of energy industry and human consumption?
I don't know the answer to that.
We do, and it really began with our agribusiness. As the Mississippi Delta started looking at the water tables and how much we were using there, and hydraulic fracking, and how much water that's going to take. What do you do with it after it's being used? How many times can you use it? And so Mississippi State University, our agricultural university, has done a great deal of research and development on what does the water needs of the future look like. We've had so much of it. I mean, Mississippi is the father of water, so we've had such an abundance of water. It's something that we take for granted, but it will not always be that way. And the more of it we utilize, particularly in the production of energy, the more complaints you're going to begin to hear. And so it is part, I think, of our energy plan of how much water is being utilized. How do we then deal with that the water after, if there's a residue after that? Yet if you don't have one, you need to get your plan together because it is one of the areas that our opponents will begin to attack you on. That fairly soon you'll do what all, and if you're not careful, we'll end up with some crazy thing called Waters of America. Y'all heard of that? Yeah. So if you get control of man's water, you got control. So if I get some Democrat to come on my property and look at my lake and say, we got runoff going into this lake, and so now we're in control of it, and I'm going to fine you if you don't do certain things. This is a real issue, and at the state level, if the federal government gives us the authority, I think they will, we'll be able to deal with it at a state level through our energy plan and dealing with our research universities.
Yeah, I'll say this real quickly. We've talked about oil, we've talked about wealth production, and we didn't speak about it, gold, obviously. Think about certain commodities that make the world run, that everybody talks about and cares about. In our lifetimes, for many of us, and probably all of us, but certainly 50 and 100 years from now and beyond, the most powerful, precious, sought-after commodity in the world is going to be potable water, period. That's where it's going again. On the energy front, if you're not thinking about that, I would encourage you to do it. Potable water is going to be, in the lifetime of many in this room, is highly sought out commodity as anything. So if we don't have plans, we did not have a real constructive plan, and so last year I put together a group of 24, which is more than I normally would want to, but at the front end, when you're starting to feed a funnel, you want every constituency to have a stake. And everybody from the agricultural community, business community, environmental community, etc. I want people to have input. I want voices to be heard. But there's a group that we put together literally to develop exactly what the question was about, as a plan for how we can use a resource that in Kentucky we too are blessed with it. This is a fun fact for those of you. Some of you, this will be the only thing you're going to remember from this conference, so, and that's all right. But some, like years from now, you'll tell your kids, did you know that in Kentucky we have the most miles of moving water in Kentucky of any state in America other than Alaska? How about them apples? So, I mean, if the point is, but what are we doing?
Oh, that's a fact, yeah.
and it's not money. Just saying. No, the bottom line is, look, for both of them, we have the Mississippi River, we share a little bit of your river, we have the Ohio, but we have all these springs and all these rivers. The key is, what do we do with it? The reality is, what do you do with a resource that you're blessed with an abundance of? If we don't have a plan, shame on us, and you're absolutely right. The bottom line is, this whole region is blessed with a lot of it, which is why, again, the world has kind of come here. And so for that reason, if we don't have a game plan, the tail is going to wag the dog if the dog doesn't take ownership.
I don't know that South Carolina has a comprehensive plan about negotiations about water, but we have comprehensive problems. And one of them, for example, you may have seen this in some other states, all these businesses come here, some of them are big agricultural outfits, and our agricultural industry is, I think it's our biggest one, about 30 billion or so per year. Tourism is about 28 billion. We've got a lot of big things going, but of course they all require water. And so they come near some of our beautiful rivers. We've got a lot of rivers that pump a lot of water out. Well, because we are an agricultural state, have been for many years, we have no rules on how much someone can take out of that river for farming, because you want the farmers to be able to pull it out. Well, now we got these huge farms, potato farms and others, and they are taking a lot of water out of the river, so much so that the neighbors and others are downstream and are wondering if they're going to have any more. We have no law, we have no rules, we have nothing that even addresses that. That's something that we're going to have to do. I remember the funny statements John McCain used to make. He says they got so little water in Arizona that the trees chase the dogs. Y'all remember that? We got a lot of water in South Carolina, but we got to be sure that we don't mess it up. I brought a suit against North Carolina when I was Attorney General because there was a town up there, Kannapolis, on the Caucus River. It's on the other side of the hill from the Caucus River or something like that. And they were seeking a permit to draw water out of the Caucus River in a large amount. But they weren't going to use it in the city and recycle it and clean it up and put it back. But they were going to let it go down the other side of the hill. So we brought a lawsuit against North Carolina. Duke Energy got involved. When Duke got involved, that's when we got the thing settled. We went straight to the U.S. Supreme Court to give you an idea how the importance of those things on the scale. Usually, as you know, you start in the district court and go to the circuit court, and then maybe you get to go to the Supreme Court. But we went ahead and threw along the ball and asked the Supreme Court if they'd hear right then get involved in the future of water in South Carolina and nuclear plants and all that sort of stuff. And they immediately said they'd hear it. And so we went through negotiations and discussions and discovery and ended up settling the case very satisfactory. But that's right, that stuff's coming about water.
Yeah, the Colorado River, you watch what's going to happen out west. The Colorado River is getting sucked dry. They're still building in Phoenix and Las Vegas and places at a rate that's shocking. It really is.
Is that Lake Mead that's out there? Is that the big lake out there? What's the name of that lake? Have y'all seen pictures of Lake Mead? It's just a puddle. looks like the white cliffs of Dover going up the side, and all the water is gone. We don't have that problem in the southern states yet. But if we're not careful, we will.
And our opponents in this industry depend on motion. And one thing that emotionally moves people is water. Ask Flint, Michigan. So if your company is not in a program of protecting your streams and rivers, go find one and join it. Be a part of it.
Governor McMaster, at this point, I know you have an event you have to go to, but if you governors would remain, we have an opportunity this morning to have a little dialogue with the Chief of Staff to Secretary Rick Perry, Bryant McCormack. And Brian is here this morning, and as you depart, Governor, I'll call him to the stage.
Bevin, can I say one thing?
Yes, sir, please.
Speaking of, as was said, 1 and 1 and 1 is equal greater than 3. Later today, there'll be a resolution that we prepared to be submitted to this group about Yucca Mountain. Y'all, we gotta open Yucca Mountain. It's a travesty of what has happened. You will remember that is where these spent nuclear fuel disposals that we don't have anywhere else off the river. All these nuclear plants have been built in all these years, all that fuel, spent fuel is still like that. I don't know if it would withstand the terrorist attack. I don't know. I know he's been talking about this a lot. But the problem we ran into was a political problem when the President Obama and Harry Reid, where each helped the other, and the deal was that they would close Yucca. There's no place else even close to Yucca Mountain in terms of its capacity and safety and stability for this fuel and fuel to be loaded. There's no place like it. And if we find how many years it take to open it up. But South Carolina ratepayers pay electric bills for utility companies who produce nuclear power. In South Carolina alone, our customers have paid, the last time I checked, was $2.2 billion into the fund. By law, it was only open. Only. That's all it can be used.
I think it's $40 billion.
A total $40 billion. $40 billion by law, by contract, and used only to open that place. I don't know what somebody has designs on it for. I don't know where it might go. We got to do something about that. And when I was Attorney General, we brought the lawsuit for Aiken County in the state of South Carolina, demanding that the Department of Energy proceed with the law to get the permits from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to open Yucca. President Obama told the Department of Energy to stop, which they did. So that's when we brought the lawsuit. And we were successful in the lawsuit. The judge ordered, I think it was in 2011 or maybe early 2012, the court, D.C. Court of Appeals, ordered that the government proceed with the opening of Yucca. That is, the Department of Energy to proceed with this permit request to the extent they have the money. Well, they were defunded, of course, every year, and so it never got anywhere. You can't do it. You cannot make, the court cannot tell the Congress to spend money. That's the provision of powers. So the Trump administration is moving in that direction and getting it started again. But we need to hurry. This is another one of those delay things. So this resolution, if passed adopted by this group, will help with that because we don't have it. So
Now that you've opened Pandora's box, do you want to talk about, would you like to say something about the South Carolina fuel fabrication?
LOX plant, yes, that's another problem. You know, we don't see problems, we don't see issues.
It's an opportunity.
There you go.
Some opportunities here.
I'm glad you're our opinion.
Yeah, well, we got a real opportunity.
I've had a few of those.
Well, let me just say one quick thing. Thomas Edison very famously said, most people in life might miss opportunity, because he usually shows up in overalls and looks like hard work.
This is hard work, all right. In 2007, they started, I think that's when they started the construction of the mixed oxide facility at the Savannah River site, which is just outside of Bevin on the Savannah River. It produced tritium for nuclear bombs all those years, and now they're cycling that down. And so this opportunity came up to get the plutonium from all over the world and bring it there, put it through a mixed oxide process that has not been completed yet. They do it in France and some other places, but we don't have one here. So all the plutonium was being sent here, but then the Obama administration decided that they wanted to stop the building of that facility. The problem is there's nothing else you can do with plutonium. There's nothing stronger on Earth that we've discovered yet than plutonium. You want to blow something up and put it in a plutonium bomb, and it'll blow it up. So we got tons. That Mark's facility is scheduled to receive, I think it's 34 tons of plutonium. It doesn't take but just a little bit of plutonium to make something explode. That's a lot of plutonium. It takes a long time to downgrade, but that is the only good way to plutonium. How do you downgrade plutonium so somebody can't get it and put it in a bomb? Two things you can do according to what the competent people tell me. Two ways to do it. One thing you can do is put it through a mixed oxide process where it turns it into something else. It turns it into, I call it digestible or safe waste, nuclear waste, and it turns it into pellets, uranium, that go into nuclear reactors. So it is a source of fuel that is worth estimated about $50 billion that will be sold to the nuclear reactors for much less than that. You can do that, or you can put it in a bomb and blow it up somewhere. Those are the two things you can do with plutonium. And now we're stopped, and we have that plutonium here. And the previous administration, the Obama administration, decided they wanted to shut it down. We need to open that up to keep that process going. The Trump administration is very interested in the details to make the big decisions on what to do. So that's going to, one way or another, that's what everybody in this room needs help on that too.
I know you got to run. Thank you.
And this thing I'm running for is good news. It's the kind of stuff we've been talking about.
Bryant.
You notice we were kind of headed with him there.
We're going to go help make a really good announcement.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Come on in and join the party.
Come on in, Chief.
I don't want to get snipped.
You can take care of that.
Yeah,
Put it in a bomb.
we're better than the Department of Energy
To have a red tape.
I'll be here to cheer you on later.
Well, we're going to have a big deregulation. Well, he's telling me, and I would say, you know, the ones that actually is Wilbur Ross. And in fact, he gave a keynote address, and Governor McMaster and I were speaking at a conference in D.C. for something. And the keynote that lunch was Secretary Ross, and he was wearing his red tape reduction pin. And last week I happened to be up there in his office, and I walked in and he wasn't wearing it. The first thing he said to me, "Oh, I don't have my button on." So I thought that clearly the message is getting out, so you'll have good company. You see Secretary Ross will meet him.
Literally, one tried to throw the other one over the place.
I don't have it with me, but I will.
We get ready to lunch.
Absolutely. Well, what I'd like to do is just have you have a little dialogue here with the governor, so you have this opportunity, and we're so glad you could be here. We expected to have the deputy secretary, and he was unable to be here because he had to be at the White House. But we were very shocked and surprised and excited when you personally decided to come. And I want you to know it means a lot to us. You were an associate member of the board when you were with the Edison Electric Institute. Of course, Bryant also worked for President Bush and also for Vice President Cheney as well, in all of the events throughout your life and everything. I don't need to go into a long iteration of that. But,
everyone will appreciate that.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. So, but I thought this would be an opportunity for you to dialogue a little bit with the governors and tell them what we're doing in the Department of Energy now that is different from what was going on in the past administration, and how we're trying to get up to speed on some of the problems that you've heard us discuss today.
Well, Ken, thank you for the opportunity here as a surrogate speaker of the Deputy Secretary Bryant. I know I was right out Governor McMaster was talking about some of the arsenal, and I think that just as a reminder for folks, that the Department of Energy does have a pretty major role in the National Security Council and in that space, and so while we're oftentimes talking about just the energy issues, that broader mandate is also a big part of our mandate within the government, and so a lot happening in the world. I think, as everyone knows, we read the newspaper every morning, and watch North Korea especially. It's taking up a lot of attention span from a lot of folks. So I was able to join early, so I listened to the governors on stage about the storms, and very much appreciate the feedback. I think it was Governor McMaster saying that he called Administrator Pruitt, and it's within probably 18 hours or so out of labor. I'll tell you one of the things when I met with Governor Perry prior to him becoming secretary. Sorry, Governor Bryant, I'm from New Jersey and Washington, so I'm like your worst. I'm like your worst nightmare. But I will say this. I mean, I've worked in government and I've worked in industry during significant storm events, and not that we should ever be patting ourselves on the back, but I think the communication between the states and the agencies, and I think Governor McMaster was using situational awareness as kind of a new term. I think that interagency process is sometimes a new term for some others, and I know the first time I used it with Secretary Perry, kind of gave that look like a dog that hears a new sound for the first time. Interagency process, what is that? And I go, that's what we have to make sure everyone else is on the same page. And but I will tell you, during the effort, Harvey, Irma, and now post, that conversations and those conversations with EPA in particular, where we have to do concurrence on the waivers to respond to new law, that we can work with FEMA. I've really given them a lot of credit. They've been extremely responsive, and I'll say that the president says, hey, everything is going well so far. And he puts a big emphasis on so far, because we're not through with this yet. There's a lot that's going to have to happen in the recovery aspect, and in some ways there won't be recovery. It's going to have to be rebuilt. So there's going to have to be a lot of thought about that.
Two of our members, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, are both devastated.
Right.
We're hoping to have a representative from Puerto Rico. He was on his way yesterday, but I don't think he made it. Just getting on and off the island is a problem. And we have corresponded and texted with our allies, our friends, our board members in Puerto Rico and in the Virgin Islands, including the governor, and things are just terrible down there. They certainly would like some help. They would like the Department of Energy to weigh in on this. And so I'm a messenger to you to ask you to do that. It's very devastating, and they may not have power back for months. And so I know that a number of our utilities will be responding in kind and so forth, but they need lots of help.
And so you want to know a message received. I had a conversation with the secretary last night, and with some of my colleagues this morning. When you think about these waivers, it was great that we could do a lot of them quickly on different fuels. But there are, given those different before. And I think, again, having Secretary Perry in the role that he is and being the former governor, he is always forward-leaning on this. He said, you guys got to jump in, you got to fill the vacuum. People need to see that you're doing things, and you actually doing them, because time is of the essence. We don't want to be getting caught up in a bureaucratic wrangle on things, and it, I'll admit, the waiver stuff was great. There have been some other processes along the way that have been a little bit more challenging, and those are going to be some of our lessons learned. I think overall it's been rather positive.
Oh, absolutely. Just being able to call the Department of Energy and have someone call you back and not chastise you. They call you back and say, it looks like we're going to have to take you to court. They call you back and say, it looks like we can get that way. Rick's got a great staff and he's a perfect guy to do that. Coming from a little energy state like Texas, he knows a little bit about it.
I will note that 3 governors in the Trump administration cabinet are SSEB members, former members. So good on you all. You've got good alumni up there doing great work. So,
tell us a little bit about some of the new things at the department, how you're changing what was done previously, and your support for fossil fuels, your support for renewables, and how is all this coming about now?
Yeah.
We've had one budget come out, and certainly a lot of things were cut out of it. Then Congress met, and a lot of things were put back. So I'm just wondering how the department is dealing with that, and do you see new appointments coming soon? There are so many unfilled positions that it's hard to play a baseball game if you don't have your team on the field.
Well, I completely agree on that, and I'm sure the governors would as well. Everyone has different appointment authorities. I think, unfortunately, for the Department of Energy, we got caught a little bit behind the 8 ball. Secretary Perry did not get confirmed until the first week of March. And between January 20th and the 2nd of March, a number of cabinet secretaries did. And we think about the clearance process and everything that goes into that. A lot of other departments just got people into the pipeline before we did. As of today, we have 2 Senate-confirmed positions filled. That's the secretary and the deputy secretary. We've got 3 that are awaiting confirmation. They made it out of the Senate committee. And we have 2 more that are receiving hearings this week. The not having that leadership it's a challenge. Just is what it is. There's having a few folks like myself around is helpful, but we're not the ones. I can't do everything, and nor does anyone want me to do everything. But it is we don't have an undersecretary for energy. We don't have an undersecretary for science. We talked earlier about some of the water issues. These are all things that what you and Governor McMaster were talking about are things that are on our plate every single day. And now that we're almost 9 months into the administration, it is a challenge. And hopefully these guys and gals get through quickly. But it's been an uphill effort so far. So if you happen to know any senators, like you all I'm sure do, I know you don't do advocacy here, Ken, but in the event you have an advocate opportunities, we can please just weigh in. I mean, again, you think about who are the people who are supposed to be doing the response for these storms? That's those undersecretaries and assistant secretary for electricity delivery. And we need someone watching this 24/7. So overall, I think across the board, the administration's got a number of more folks into these positions, but again, it's free to acknowledge there's a fair amount of politics at the beginning of the administration that back and forth with the Senate, and Senator Schumer is going to do what he's going to do, which is Senator McConnell probably did a little bit with President Obama. But at the end of the day, the people who suffer are the American people, those leaders in place. So it's important for us to keep pushing on that front. Areas of significant importance. There was some conversation, I guess, about water, cybersecurity. I know you guys also spoke about that. And I know across the industry, whether it's in the utility space or oil and gas space, this is just a major issue. Everyone's dealing with it. One of the first things we had to deal with, we had, the WannaCry virus that we had to address, as in a lot of other folks. And just for the Department of Energy, we have 14,000 employees, but we have 100,000 contractors. How do we communicate with all those folks? They have access to our network. We have our own challenges that we've kind of built into the system, but then when we have to react, it creates it's a difficult task at hand. And that's just, not even getting into the military cyber side of things. I just made a couple of notes just about the first 8 months in office. So I already covered the personnel front. Our first week, we had a Midwest windstorm, over 1 million people out of power up in Michigan. We had the WannaCry virus I just mentioned. Also, multiple North Korea missile attacks or launches, all getting progressively more sophisticated. These are things that are just taking up the administration's time. And you think about the legislative agenda, the president and the cabinet have to think about these other things and have to be engaged. We even got Secretary Perry was supposed to go to Ukraine on a trip, and we had a prankster who called, scheduled an interview with him, or scheduled a conversation with him on behalf of the Prime Minister of Ukraine. We thought it was the Prime Minister of Ukraine. He thought it was the Prime Minister of Ukraine. As it turns out, it was some Russian radio host impersonating. So,
Those pesky Russians.
He didn't have a sign dialogue with him.
Oh man, it was. But then I'm the one that has to go and say, "Hey, you had a conversation earlier for about 20 minutes. That wasn't really the president of Ukraine." Because that guy was asking me some strange questions. But these guys have hit a couple other folks. Obviously, the hurricanes have taken up a lot of time. Been a number of successes. Obviously, the Supreme Court, getting a new justice on the Supreme Court's been a big deal. But the legislative agenda is still a major challenge. I mean, when you think about Obamacare, we also still talking about tax reform this year. Deregulation issues are still at the forefront. The president did a number of executive orders at the beginning of the administration that take time, and we're in the process of the dereg one in particular, opening more opportunities. Governor Bevin, you were talking about the infrastructure investment. The fact that we didn't get quorum on FERC until probably about 5-6 weeks ago, it's a major challenge. Major challenge for everyone in this room. Everyone in this room knows that that's billions of dollars of projects, thousands of employees, and a lot of opportunity that's out there to work on our effort towards energy dominance, energy independence, and energy dominance. The dominance part is, I thought I would actually just relay a little story about how some of this kind of came about. But Secretary Perry had attended the G7 meeting in Rome, in the good old Rome. I had to go participate in these conversations ahead of time where they argue over commas and semicolons and the word and diverse versus diversification. There's such a big difference between the two, according to some of the opinions there are. And but then when you get to this big round table and you have the leaders of the different ministers of the countries there, and they asked the head of the International Energy Agency to give an overview. And this fellow's name is Fatih Birol. He's an economist. He's from Turkey. And this is probably an 8-page slide deck. And it was all about how if you want to achieve energy independence, or if you want to achieve your economic and your environmental goals, you need to be thinking about how North America is doing. And he basically told the American story about how you can grow your economy and improve your environment at the same point in time. It's not a binary choice. That just opened the door for, I wish I had known the guy was going to get that presentation, so I said to the secretary, I said, man, I think he just did the warm-up act for you. And it really was, because when you think about what Texas did during his 14 years as governor of growing the economy, growing the population, and improving the environment, that's a story that we want to tell all over the world. We don't want to be making decisions about turning this on versus that. When we go into these bilateral conversations with the other ministers, it would be Italy or France or England, and they would tell you, hey, here's how we're going to address it. We're going to do efficiency, or we're going to do wind, or we're going to do solar. And they would say, please, you understand that's what we want to do, right? He said, yeah, I understand. And then they would take from their pocket the map, the gas pipeline map of Europe, and they would unfold it and say, okay, now that's what we want to do, but here's what we need right now. We need more natural gas, and they would draw the line from their country up to Russia. He said, now that's where we're getting all our gas from right now. It would be a heck of a lot better if we could be getting it from you. Okay? So what do you guys want to do about it? It's your infrastructure. So the point I'm making there is there is a significant transition that's taking place. It's taking place here. It's taking place in other parts of the world. But having those fossil or baseload fuels available to bridge that is going to be important. And I think that a lot of countries are beginning to realize that they cannot rely on Russia, or they don't want to rely on Russia. They want a real economic partner. And with our abilities in the gas space in particular, that's an opportunity for us to export more of our resources. Those resources don't have to be just the fuel resources, but it also is the innovation and technology that's being developed here, whether it's in the private sector or in and through our labs. These are great opportunities for us to, again, promote energy dominance. The rest of the world is looking for these opportunities. They need them. Did you mention you were in India? So we met with the Indian atomic energy folks last week. Everyone is in need of more. We may have flat declining growth in the energy space, but the rest of the world doesn't. And we have an opportunity to fill that gap.
Building 6 nuclear sites in India. They can do it. They don't have near the regulations we do, but we won't make them do it right. As I told them, one bad player in India harms the nuclear industry forever. So, let's see that from I was in Saudi Arabia as well. It's interesting to see Saudi now with $50 a barrel. They're actually going to train a workforce because they got to put their people to work at. They just can't pay them to sit at home and not work anymore. So even Saudi is going under dramatic change.
I think how things changed. I think it was 15 years ago, literally only 15 years ago, that OPEC was trying to stabilize oil at $28 a barrel. Remember that? Maybe 16. I mean, it was literally in the early O's that they were trying to stabilize oil at 20. They said if we could just get it to $28 a barrel. So how quickly it changes. I mean, remarkable in that respect. And to your point, I mean, not only have we seen that same period we talked about where emissions nationally come down 70%, GDP has increased 250% in the United States during that exact same period of time. So they're not mutually exclusive by any stretch at all. They are absolutely possible. One thing that I would hope, and I think is part of this conference, it was going to be part of this panel, and I don't know that truth be told Tom would allow it, but cyber is critical. This is the one thing I would say. You alluded to it. It is our ability to prepare for, proactively, intentionally prepare for, and then to react to in real-time manner things that are encroachments, and I'll tell you, I mean, just you look at the Commonwealth of Kentucky, I mean, hundreds of thousands of intrusions on a monthly basis, literally, into our government systems, let alone what you all are doing. You think about the susceptibility of the grid to a cyber attack. So it's the preparation, it's the real-time reaction during the course, and it's recovery. And if we're not intentionally, proactively, as states, as companies, as industries, thinking about this, we are, and I will tell you, we are, and this I'm curious from the Department of Energy standpoint, ridiculously unprepared for what's capable of happening to us. We just are, in large measure, because there's just nobody with the expertise and the ability. We've been very fortunate, actually. I'm in the process of bringing a fellow on board to oversee this and to see all IT for our state. He's actually here. I feel bad picking him out, but he's actually active duty military. He's an instructor at the Army War College on this issue. He's a PhD and is a guy who gets this. But there's not many people like him. Colonel Brindle, Dr. Brindle is this guy. Just raise your hand for a second. There's not a lot of people like this. And I'll tell you, I wish we could clone him times 50 something. But for America and for the Department of Energy, there just are not many people who understand the threat, who have been actively engaged on the front line, and the ability to both prepare for, react in real time, and then to be able to recover is something critical. And I'm curious from the Department of Energy, how difficult is it to get the people you need, and is it a very intentional part of what you all are doing right now to help protect America's energy grid?
Is very much an intentional part. It's something though that's conversations with the secretary and the deputy, something that we want to raise up because it is so critical. And the challenge is constantly evolving. You know, what you were preparing for 2 years ago, denial of service is not what we're preparing for today. We do have utilizing some of the national labs with their expertise, and there's plenty of it there. Protecting the grid, having the grid respond when there is an attack. You're going to have this challenge of how do you, I guess the first question is how do you protect against everything? And that's a difficult answer, question to answer because the answer is you can't protect against everything, and you've got to constantly be upping your game on it. But if there is some type of event, how quickly can we respond? How quickly can we contain it? And not have it, be a secondary event, because I think a lot of times, these actors that are out there are looking to see how people respond the first time, and then they introduce some other, virus to the system or whatever it might be. But without a doubt, it is our infrastructure, national infrastructure, and it could be the grid, it could be dams, it could be any number of pieces of key equipment. Exactly. So, the nuclear guys, I'll ask them. I mean, they're offline on a lot of that. So, but
can I ask a favor though of you? I mean, from the Department of Energy, as just an American citizen, but more so even specific to this industry and my role as a governor as well. I really believe America needs to have some equivalent of the Manhattan Project related to being prepared for this. If we don't, we're not being as wise, I believe, as we could be. And it is the technology, the minds are out there. What incentive is the United States? I mean, if we think we're going to get these people for $100-something thousand government GS-13 jobs, we're kidding ourselves. Right? We have got to be willing to bend. And I'll tell you, the wonderful thing is you have a secretary who's a guy who knows how to think outside the box. And I would throw this to him and say, have him inside the Department of Energy, even if it's only for this industry, although frankly it would be for all of America. We need nationally to come up with some equivalent of a Manhattan Project specifically focused on how do we protect our grid, and how do we protect our entire network, and how do we protect our country from cyber attacks. Because I think we're at the front end of what we're going to see. And I just know, even from talking to Dr. Grinnell here, I mean, that what the United States has is a tiny piece of what it's going to ultimately need, and we haven't even begun to see the real wave for sure yet. And I think that may require us to go into whether it's down even into the high schools, into the best and brightest universities, into our academies, whatever the case may be, and groom young people with the mind, the capacity, and pay them whatever we have to pay them, and give them whatever incentive, and give them whatever environment to put these bright light lines together and get out in front of this. Because literally, there's a kid in Romania in his parents' basement that could bring down any company in here, literally. Let alone,
He's not taking French literature.
yeah, he's probably not taking exactly, or interpreting things. And let alone a nefarious government who may or may not have a similar thought. So I would be grateful. I think we could be American.
I'll take it back.
But I think there is a lot of work being done. I know our research universities has one has a very robust cybersecurity program, and we're working with DOD and Keesler Air Force Base. If you go through the Air Force, be certified in cybersecurity, Keesler is your final graduate school. There's areas in there I can't get in. So there's a lot of work being done, but you're right. It seems like every time we develop a defense, someone finds a new offense. And this is going to go on, I think, forever. But we are not just standing by. I mean, we are doing a lot of work in this area. It is cybersecurity. There's not one program I go to, not one speech I make, not one university, that somewhere on the agenda is cybersecurity is not part of the topic.
But if we're honest, and I'll just speak with that, none of us is ready. None of us is even close to being ready.
Mississippi is.
Nor is America.
Trust me.
Nor is America.
We'll be coming in here.
Nobody's ready.
Well, like I said, I think the challenge of it being an evolving issue of such magnitude and being, as you pointed out, connected internationally, just adds to the complexity of the situation.
Before he left, Governor McMaster mentioned Yucca Mountain and the impact of that. I will forever have a great place in my heart for George W. Bush, who did not kick that can down the road and who made the decision. And the only problem he had was he only had a year or two left on his term. And so when the decision was made and the new administration came in, they immediately reversed it. We have a chance now with the new administration to solidly get Yucca Mountain moving and be able to move all of the used nuclear fuel, as Governor Bryant likes to call it, that's sitting out in front of all these nuclear plants throughout the southern region. And we would like to see that happen. And so another thing I would ask you to take back, Brian, is that there certainly will be a resolution this afternoon from the Southern States Energy Board. But in addition to that, we would like to have DOE support to move this forward, to get it done once and for all, so we can begin to take those wastes out of harm's way.
Right. Secretary Perry discussed this in his confirmation hearing and subsequent budget meetings. There's a moral obligation to do this. We've made this commitment. The country made this commitment. We need to do it. We should also be looking at other interim storage opportunities. But we're on the book. We're in support of Yucca. And it's not just the southern states. There's 39 states that have storage that needs to be moving. As we're participating in any of those broader conversations, I think it's good to remind it's always good to remind President about the importance of this issue. They can't hear it enough. And whether that's Capitol Hill or the administration, just continue to give encouragement. It's here, there's a commitment that was made, and it has to happen by law. There's also with the McMaster.
$1 billion.
So there's it is definitely something that gets a lot of attention inside the department amongst the people that are over there, and so I know people in it's going to get more attention.
So another thing that has come up is the President's commitment to coal, the President's commitment to do something about the issues that have occurred in the industry. And so I'd like to have your take on the whole issue of fossil energy R&D is something we've talked about. Carbon capture and storage, enhanced oil recovery. We'll have a talk tomorrow from Petronova, which, as you know, came out of the demonstration that the Southern States Energy Board did. And so we're very proud of that. But you know, we want to know what the administration's commitment will be to fossil energy. Through the past administration, we watched the budget go down, 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 and then really down. And we have some critical technologies out there at the National Energy Technology Laboratory that are being developed right now and can be used in coal facilities. And so we just want to know what your commitment is to that and where you're headed.
Well, yeah, I think the president's been pretty forthright on this and out front. It's going to using all the above. But we're going to take the thumbs off the scale that's been against fossil energy. In the past 8 years, the emphasis has been on other forms. And Ken mentioned that whole lab. I mean, there's a lot of fantastic work being done there on the rare earth elements that we use in other parts of our manufacturing, our high-tech manufacturing that are important. We're going to continue looking for export opportunities. You may have seen the shipment of anthracite that went to Ukraine. Hopefully there's going to be more. You're going to continue to see more export of LNG through, and again, just Governor Bevin's point, just how quickly things change. I don't know if anyone from Dominions here, but we have Cove Point, which is an export facility that was being built on Chesapeake a few years ago, and now they're in the process of making it, it was an import facility, and now it's being transferred to an export. Exactly. And that's an opportunity, again, for expanding this marketplace. The world market is where technologies that we use for efficiencies and in the renewable space. We certainly still have a lot of opportunity there, not just still, but a significant amount of opportunity. I think you're also going to, I'm sure everyone saw that the Secretary directed a study on electricity markets and base load. There's a concern that there's a lot of distortions in the marketplace, and we want to take a look at that. A layering of regulations and incentives over the years. PERPA that was created in the 1970s may not be the greatest thing for what's happening in the 2010s. The technology has changed, the fuels have changed, how we use them, how they're used themselves, but how the customer also uses them is all very different, and we should be taking some of that into consideration. We don't want to stifle innovation by getting stuck in the same regulations that we've had over decades. You mentioned CCUS. Secretary attended the Clean Energy Ministerial in Beijing, and this is another one of these worldwide confab get-togethers where everyone, says great things.
Beijing.
They had to delay it a week because of smog.
Governor, you'll actually find this funny. One of our counterparts said, "I'm sorry about the weather this week. It's usually much cleaner, but we put in all these windmills north of Beijing, and it blows all the smog in." That's one of the few laughs on the team. Wait, so we're attending this event that our administration put a lot of money into, and it's a Clean Energy Ministerial. They have maybe a dozen working groups on different technologies, fuels, etc. Clean Energy Ministerial, nothing on nuclear. No working group on nuclear. So we proposed that, and we got that added. So there's now a clean energy there's a nuclear working group at that meeting. And then also we created a group for CCUS. That was another thing that they did not have. But they had plenty on everything else. They said, what, this is a technology that we put a lot of investment in. There's opportunity here. There's enhanced oil recovery. These are things that we can do. We've shown that they can be done here in the U.S. And if you're going to be using, either China or India or any of these other places, something you want to consider, and we can help you with that. So those two just at one meeting, two things that we were able to do that for some reason just haven't been done over the past 8 years. And then, so I covered markets, exports, and just looking at the budget itself internally, where the focus is. There's, I would say that again, the thumb was on the scale in an uneven way, and we want to level set that.
Thing we just talked about too, when you think about the possibility to export energy. And one of the big issues, again, we talked earlier about geopolitical unrest. 30% of the electricity in continental Europe comes from Gazprom. 30% of it comes from Russia through Ukraine. You think about it, imagine having a third of your economy dependent upon somebody who may or may not have your interest in mind, who has political and financial control over you. It's not coincidental or accidental that literally right now on the continent, where are they building new coal-fired power plants right now? In Europe. Progressive, green, forward-thinking, renewable Europe is building coal-fired power plants, 18 of them, I think, half a dozen of them in Germany. I mean, why are they building them? Because in the winter of 2015, or just a couple of winters ago, they had rolling brownouts, and they were really, truly undersold, and they were being held over the barrel by somebody who was taking full financial advantage of it. It is a changing landscape, and it isn't just about supply and demand of the actual resource. There's a lot of politics involved, too. And the potential concern over the potential for politics to be involved. It's changing and creating opportunity. And again, most people miss opportunity because it does show up in overalls. It looks like hard work. There's a lot of hard work and opportunity ahead of this industry. If it sees, it really is, for this nation as well, what you just notified.
Governor, you did mention storage earlier. That is definitely another place that we're going to spend some time focus on. I mean, that is without a doubt something that has to be pursued. Whether it's hydro has storage capability, gas has some storage capability, but in the renewable space as well. Again, this is whether it's batteries or other types of storage. It's something we definitely want to take a look at and add to our innovation results.
One last thing I'll say real quick. It wasn't coincidental. The reason Russia took Ukraine, if you think it wasn't because of the pipeline and Gazprom, you weren't paying attention. That was it. So they have unfettered ability to control that 30% flow onto the European continent. That was it. There may be 1,000 other little ancillary reasons why someone thinks it was or explained, but it was because Ukraine had the ability to control, for a variety of reasons, the flow, and now it's unfettered from Gazprom straight into the European continent. And so it's those types of things and countries' willingness to do things that we may or may not agree with that are changing this landscape.
Bryant, I want to thank you very much for coming this morning. Once again, a former associate member, and we really consider you one of us, and so we really appreciate the fact that you are where you are, and know that we can reach you and that we can work with you in the future. I want to also thank our governors, Governor Bryant, Governor Bevin. Thank you so much for being here, for being a part of this dialogue. I think I got a lot of things out of it. I got a lot of notes. And
yeah, the reception begins in 10 minutes.